Well, I always use an H because I hate my first name, my real legal name. Gary was given to me when I was in camp by one of my Hawaiian friends because he thought this is a better name for you. And I took him because when we went to the relocation center in Rohwer, in our one block, there were 4 of us with the same first name. And some of the guys, just to tease us, they would just yell, and you could hear people when they call somebody else, because we were in a small area, you know. And all 4 of us would run in answer to that name, and invariably it's not us. The one that answered first was never been him, you know. They used to just do that just to irritate us, you know. And since my Hawaiian friend said, no, I'm going to call you Gary, and he named me after Gary Cooper, you see. That's how everybody knows me by. And I prefer it that way. My father named me after some friend of his. But in a sense, my father, in that sense, he was a Democrat. There were 6 kids. 3 of us had just American names. We didn't have Japanese names like most kids did. 3 of them had only Japanese name, no English name. I don't know why. Japanese families were such that, especially when a woman marries into a family, she doesn't make decisions for that family by herself. It becomes a family affair, you know. So she was told to bring the kids back to Japan. We'll discuss what the situation will be and what she should do. And this is when we were there almost 8 months, and when they decided that my mother was to come back to America with the 2 oldest boys, and the rest of the kids were to remain in Japan. They would be taken in by all our relatives separately, you know, so they would be brought up there. In a way, I suppose they, outsider could think of, well, they're helping my mother by doing this, you know. But, of course, this is something we learned years after when we got to be adult there. My mother apparently had a conflict with my father's sister, you know, and she wasn't too keen on having her in Japan, you know, so she told her, take the 2 boys and go back to America, you know. That's what my mother did, so that was a family decision, so, you know, that's what she did. But, you know, for a woman with 2 kids, a foreigner, that's a difficult life for her. Age had a lot to do with the attitude we had in camp, you know. So maybe we were short-sighted. Maybe we took advantage of a lot of things that we didn't have to listen to our parents as much because they didn't have the control as before the war, you know. As long as they were feeding us before the war, what they said goes by, you know, they were the boss. But we were in camp, we were all the same age. We wanted to define what can they do to punish us. Nothing. And we took advantage of that, unfortunately. You know, but like I said, we just made a good situation of the predicament that we were in, you know. We made the best of it, I think. Question number 27 was will you be willing to serve in the American military wherever you're assigned? But the way I looked at it is, are you asking me if I would volunteer for that? Maybe I understood it wrong. I'm not sure, because like I said, our camp never had these mass mutinies of young males, you know. So I didn't have the knowledge or the input or the opinion of my other friends, you know, because we individually went to answer that by ourselves. I did. And I think our whole block, individually, the men went to, you know, even the youngsters went in. Along they were 17, they were forced to sign that document, and we just did it on our own. We made up our own mind, we acted on it. And I knew my 3 closest friends, or the oldest friend, their family had already opted to go to they're going to be separated. Because they told us that's what was going to happen if you answered the wrong way, you know. But the 28th question was, will you abide by the laws and Constitution of the United States of America and forswear all allegiance to a foreign power and the Emperor of Japan? Well, to my way of thinking, hell, I didn't know any other country except America, you know. But so I said, yes, I would abide by the Constitution. But we had friends who were they were considered adults that said, how dare the government ask us to forswear a government that we never swore to in the first place? So we knew about people that did that. So they refused to sign, and right away they were considered disloyal, and they went to Tule Lake, you know. We knew about that. But because of the way I answered, people like Roy, as soon as the draft came in, they were put into the Army and taken off. My number never came up. One of the first things my mother asked me if I going to take advantage of the GI Bill and go to school, and I said, no, I'm not really interested in school. But I couldn't see myself working in the fields again, you know, that kind of thing that really appealed to me. So I joined what they call a 5220 club. These are anybody was of age to work. If you didn't want to work and you was a veteran, you could get $20 a week for 1 year and do absolutely nothing. So I did that for about 3 months, and I got bored doing nothing, to tell you the truth. And so when my mother asked me, well, you're not going to school, you don't want to work, why don't you re-up and go to Japan? Because the Army was recruiting people to study Japanese and go over as MIS, you know. I said, okay, I did. And so I spent a year in Presidio, Monterey, military, learned enough Japanese that I was sent to Tokyo. And as limited as my knowledge of Japanese, they assigned me to the Sukagawa prison, which holds all the war criminals. And here again, I got into some very interesting situation. I was able to interpret for when Mrs. Tojo's wife came to see General Tojo, you know. I got to interpret for them. Although I didn't have to directly interpret. All I was supposed to do is listen to what they were asking or saying and give a gist of it to some Caucasian officer afterward. Other well-known figures that I listened in was Admiral Yoshida, who was Secretary of the Navy in the Japanese government during the war. The only thing about them was the fact that he spoke as good English as I spoke Japanese, you see. He was talking back and forth with his lawyer. I was only supposed to listen in to make sure that they stuck to the business of, you know, and don't go meandering off into other conversation. And I was supposed to inform our superior if they did that and ask them to stick to the subject, you know. And the only disagreeable situation I ran into when I was a Sukagawa president was him. We used to work the information desk. There was 2 of us assigned to it. We spoke Japanese. And this one lady with a baby on her back came all the way from Kyushu, which is the southern island, came into Tokyo, came to see her husband. And he was condemned to death for war crimes. And they were only allowed to visit once a month. So she came all the way from Kyushu. It took her 5 days with a baby. And when she came to this, she wanted to meet her husband, and the other fellow that worked in the front desk looked through the record and they couldn't find her. Find her husband's name on the list, and they didn't know what was, so they called me over to explain it to her that he was no longer on the list as an inmate, you know. But she insisted that he was there and showed us, in fact, showed us the letter that she had received from him. Unfortunately, we found out that a few days before there, he was executed. And I had to tell her that. And that was probably one of my low points when I was being the interpreter, to inform somebody like that, her husband is no longer here, you know. And I didn't really tell her he was executed, but he had passed on, you know. That's the way I put it to her, so that I try to soften as much as I, but she must have realized what had happened to him. And that's probably one of the lowest points of my time at the Sukagawa prison. Although I had to go out to after people were sentenced and their court session was over and it came back into, just before they actually were to serve whatever sentence was passed on to them by the military tribunal, I had to read off the official, you know, the declaration by the court martial or the court as to exactly what they were being sentenced. I had to read off all that. And I did have to read at least twice where people were sentenced to death, you know. I also was given the option that when they came time for the major war criminal, General Tojo included, were to be executed, I was first choice to be at the hanging, and I read the final sentence, you know. But the colonel gave me an out. He said, "You want to do this, or you rather not do it?" I opted not to do it. So they took the second fellow, and he's the one that read off the actual sentencing report just before the execution itself. Maybe I should be consider myself a chicken for checking out, but I just, I don't know, it just wasn't within me. He gave me the option, so I took it, you know.